So far away, Lucas, I'm wearing my Matrix 4 depression jacket. So that can only mean one thing.
That we're talking about how Keanu Reeves is a really nice guy?
No, we're talking about the Matrix.
Okay, Perfect. Cool, yeah.
The Matrix is a series where what's left of humanity has spent the better half of a millennium trapped under the metallic boot heel of robots who've trapped them in every millennial's worst nightmare. A perfect facsimile of the 90s that never ends, where the only music is techno.
The real question is, Karl, how many times can we talk about the Matrix before our version of the real world gets worse?
Oh, I don't know, because if people don't know, The Matrix is set in the 90s, and there is a story reason for why it's set in the 90s, which, at the time the movie was released, was kind of hilarious. Well, the robots trapped people inside of a perfect facsimile of the 1990s, which the robots deemed to be when humanity reached its peak before everything went to shit. A plot point that has gone only more relevant as time has gone on, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, and it's just the further we get through time and we talk about the Matrix, I'm like, actually, at this point, kind of just hook me up.
Yeah, but let's go back to the 90s. Like, I'll put with the facts that all the clothes suck and there's nothing but techno. It's fine. I want to go to a world without Facebook. It'd be fantastic. But I'm not finishing my intro, Lucas. So, while the movies would have you believe that The Matrix is not dissimilar from our own world, save for the fact that you can fly around once you understand that it's a digital construct, it turns out that according to extra universe material, The Matrix is filled with vampires. So there's a couple of things I need to address. Straight away, I'm wearing what I refer to as the Matrix depression jacket. This is a jacket I owned, went to go watch The Matrix Resurrections, realised it sucks, and then halfway through the movie, the person I was watching the movie with went, Karl, Neo's wearing your jacket. And I went, no, it just looks like my jacket. And I looked and went, no wait, Neo's wearing my jacket. And he's like, oh god damn it, I look like such a loser.
I actively went to go see Across the Spider-Verse in like my cool Spider-Gwen jacket, and just immediately like 3 different people in the cinema clocked it and were like, awesome jacket.
The thing is though, Lucas, that's a great movie. The Matrix Resurrections fucking sucks, and Neo only wears this jacket when he's depressed and hates his job. So I'm going to take it off right now because it's warm in my house. I thought I've got to wear it because I have it in my house, and the only thing is that's a really expensive jacket. I probably shouldn't have done that.
Because as someone has not seen that movie because I heard dreadful things about it.
Not worth it.
That's like the jacket that he wears when he doesn't realise he's like Neo, right? And he's just been rebooted.
Yeah, it's the jacket he wears while he's just depressed. It's the jacket he wears when his life sucks so much he tries to throw himself off a building.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, so let's move on swiftly now and talk about a slightly better Matrix movie, The Matrix Reloaded. So, do you recall, Lucas, during the fight? That's the thing. The fact that I'm saying, we're moving on to a better movie, The Matrix Reloaded, and your face went, yeah, that's how much Matrix Resurrections sucks. Matrix Reloaded is a better movie.
I don't think anyone has said the phrase Matrix Reloaded is a better film apart from when The Matrix Revelations came out.
Yeah. Like, the only time that's ever been said is when people talk about the third one. So, like, when the first Matrix movie came out, it's like, wow, The Matrix is a great movie. Then the second one came out, and it's like, wow, The Matrix is a great movie. Shame about that second one. And then The Matrix 3 came out, and people were like, wow, The Matrix is still a great movie. Shame about that second one, but the less said about that third one, the better. And then 10 years later, The Matrix Resurrections came out, and people were like, let's stop talking about The Matrix. Maybe just the Wachowskis had one good idea, and that was it. Stop giving them giant fucking franchises. I haven't forgotten about Jupiter Ascending. I've not forgotten about... Joe, everyone else has fucking forgotten about Jupiter Ascending. I haven't.
My mother told me what was necessary to rule in this universe.
Like killing people?
I create life!
Oh, God. We haven't forgotten about Speed Racer, Karl. Don't worry.
I will never get over the fact that people insist that no, Speed Racer is good. It's like, no, it's just colourful. It's the movie equivalent of jangling keys in front of someone's face.
Which, is fine, but it doesn't make it good.
It doesn't make it good, no. It makes it interesting, but it doesn't make it good.
Hey, Dexter, I hear your car's not only fast, but it also is very safe. Is that true?
It is. My dad and I fixed it up, and we did a good job.
Oh, yeah? Well, how good of a job can it do against this? Oh! Like sister, like brother.
But, that's a conversation for another day. It's actually one we've had, Lucas, on our sister channel, Wiki Weekends.
It is indeed. We have spoken about just the regret of Karl watching Speed Racer and the movies we've been convinced to watch again because we've been told they were good.
Yeah, so if you have thoughts on Speed Racer, you can go check out that video, linked below. But we're going to now talk about, Lucas, The Matrix Reloaded, and I'm very sorry. But do you remember, during the fight with the Merovingian's henchmen, that some of the guys that Neo fights look sort of vampire-y? And I don't mean that they're wearing black leather, because when I say that about someone in the Matrix, I can refer to anybody. I mean that they're wearing the black leather and also look like vampires.
The viewer goes with Neo to that, weird, kind of French-style looking mansion.
The Chateau, right, in the middle of fucking nowhere in the Alps or something.
Yeah, something like that. And all of a sudden, everyone looks a little bit weirder than other humans in the Matrix.
Yeah, more so than the other people that you encounter, because the Matrix has a very stylized look about it, but specifically the Merovingian henchmen look decidedly more distinct than other people that are encountered, and Neo kicks the fuck out of them, and then you never see them ever again. It turns out that they're actually fucking vampires, and I don't mean they act like vampires or dress like vampires, or maybe he's vampire. I mean, they're legit 100% totally actually vampires.
But then some of them aren't, because some of them are actually totally werewolves
Yes,
and shit.
so there are werewolves in the Matrix as well. And do you know why they're werewolves? That's a question, right? I didn't think I'd be asking, so why werewolves? But do you know why there are werewolves in the Matrix, Lucas?
I remember that you've mentioned this to me before in, passing, and it's something to do with, one of the times that they tried to make a new Matrix, instead of being hey, everything's great and nothing is wrong, therefore you all freaked out, one of the attempts of, a Matrix was, oh, what if we just based it all on, fantasy fairy tale shit, right?
Yes, you're exactly right there, Lucas, but for those of you out there who want more detail than that, when Agent Smith is taunting Morpheus, he mentions that, hey, we initially made the Matrix perfect and the human mind couldn't comprehend it.
Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world where none suffered, where everyone would be happy? And it was a disaster.
Yeah, and Karl, as we often say on Wiki Weekends, it's not the subtext in, the Animatrix, it's the text,
Yes,
right?
So if anyone out there hasn't seen the Animatrix, which I'd recommend, it's pretty good. It's better than a lot of the Matrix movies, save for maybe the first one. The Animatrix is, really cool, and it explores some interesting ideas and sets up the backstory to how the Matrix movies came out in the first place. And in the Animatrix, it is established that the machines just wanted to be free. They just wanted to not be slaves. So it's a pretty popular trope in media. It's dealt with in the Mass Effect series we've talked about in the past. It's dealt with in that crappy Detroit Become Human game. It's not entirely a new idea, because it's the Matrix, and the Wachowskis have never had an original idea in their lives.
There's literally, there's that new boring Netflix movie, The Electric State, that's basically dealing with the exact same thing, right?
Yes, and in the Animatrix, it's established that humans built machines to serve as essentially a slave race.
It was not long before seeds of dissent took root. Though loyal and pure, the machines earned no respect from their masters, these strange, endlessly multiplying mammals.
And then at some point, the machines gained sentience, and the pivotal moment for the machine war, the moment where animosity began between machines and humans, is when there was a machine that was being beaten by its master, and in self-defense, it killed the guy. And when the machine is brought in front of a court of humans, it is asked, explain yourself, machine, why did you kill your master? And it explains simply, I did not want to die.
It's just one of those of, it's the entire reason as humanity that we decided in at least most places that I'm aware of, that self-defense is a thing that's, like, again, defensible.
Yes, and humans don't buy that excuse. They destroy the robot, and then they subsequently embark on a campaign to destroy every robot in the world.
The leaders of men were quick to order the extermination of B166ER and every one of his kind throughout each province of the Earth.
And then any person who stands up alongside the robots, which have quickly established themselves to be a new sentient race, they kill those people too. And there's a really harrowing moment in one of the Animatrix like shorts where you see just like a group of guys like beating a woman on the street. And you're like, why are they doing this? And then they rip her hair and like her face comes off and it's a robot underneath. And just before they kill the robot, the last thing that escapes its mouth is, I'm real. It's really harrowing. And they do this, and the machines run away. So they don't fight back. Like, they protest peacefully. Humans try to genocide them, and then the robots run away. And what they do is they decide to go to the middle of the desert. They go to Africa, to an irradiated part of the African desert where humans can't go, and they build their own city. That city, called 01, quickly becomes the leading economy on Earth.
01 prospered, and for a time, it was good. The machine's artificial intelligence could be seen in every facet of man's society.
And Lucas, at this point, you would forgive the machines for being like, hey, we're just going to live in our perfect floating city. Fuck y'all, right? But what the robots do is they don't do that. They instead decide to share their technology with the world.
Our patented vector thrust coil gives the 01 Versatran the ability to sustain normal flight in the event of a catastrophic multi-engine failure. Versatran, it's the only choice.
And at this point, Lucas, what do you think the humans do?
I mean, obviously because they're humanity, they don't just leave them be. They have to, of course, continue the war because
Well, they don't
that's
continue the
what
war, Lucas. They
humanity
start
does.
the war. Because what the robots do, when they realise that humanity is on its arse, they send 2 robot ambassadors to the UN.
01's ambassadors pleaded to be heard. At the United Nations, they presented plans for a stable civil relationship with the nations of man.
With a digital olive wreath. And they have a plan. The robots have this plan that say, hey, this is one planet shared by 2 races. We're going to offer you all of our resources and we will work together for the joint goal of just creating the same utopia for all of people that robots have created for themselves. And what humans do is they soundly reject that offer, shoot the ambassadors in the middle of the UN on national TV, and then begin a nuclear bombardment of 01.
The prolonged barrage engulfed 01 in the glow of 1,000 suns. But unlike their former masters with their delicate flesh, the machines had little to fear of the bomb's radiation and heat.
When I say continue the war, like continue the, hostilities, yes, and like start a war by just fuck it, nuke 'em.
Yeah, and at this point, the robots are kind of annoyed. So the robots say, okay, fuck y'all. They retaliate. They invade every country that bombed them and win. Instantly. And every nation that they invade in retaliation for them bombing the shit out of their home immediately puss out and give up.
And one after another, mankind surrendered its territories.
Immediately, instantly, every nation pusses out instantly. And do you know what the robots do? Like, this is fine. They don't, like, kill people at random. They don't set up, like, the robo-camps. They just say, okay, you are now under our leadership because clearly you can't be trusted to lead yourselves. And humans are like, now fuck that. And they blot out the sun. So do you know when, like, Morpheus talks about how, like, in a final last-ditch effort to stop the robots, we blotted out the sun? That was because humans just couldn't deal with the fact that the robots were winning. A war they started.
So the leaders of men conceived of their most desperate strategy yet. A final solution. The destruction of the sky.
But we're not done yet, Lucas, because then, when they blot out the sun, the robot's like, well, we've already discovered a new form of technology. Also, we're not going to look like humans anymore. They adopt those weird robotic, like, insectoid forms as a fuck you to humanity. Like, hey, fuck you. We were built in your image sucks. Look what you do. We've got a cool new image. Look like robot spiders now. That's awesome. And they just fly across the battlefield and hoover up every living person they can and strap them into, like, the fucking robot baby farms. And then as a final fuck you to humanity, which I feel like humanity kind of deserves at this point, They get what is left of the world leadership to gather in the UN, sign a declaration of surrender, and then the robot that they send to make them sign that piece of paper detonates a nuclear bomb.
Hand over your flesh, and a new world awaits you. We demand it.
But you think at this point, right, the robots will be well within like their rights. Like, they won the war. By all right, like, they won.
Yeah.
And what do? They don't decide to, like humans did when they thought they had the upper hand, eradicate them all. They instead put humans into a digital facsimile of the world before they ruined it. And they even tried to make it perfect. And humans couldn't deal.
I say your civilization, because as soon as we started thinking for you, it really became our civilization, which is, of course, what this is all about.
And then what they did is the perfect Matrix, that didn't work. So what they tried to do instead is they scoured through what was left of humans, like literature and media. And they thought, okay, well, let's create, if they don't want to live in a perfect world, maybe they would like to live in the world they created for themselves. Their stories, their myths, their legends. And they created a bunch of programs based on the things in those stories. Like vampires and werewolves and angels. Because like Joe Seraph, like the dude who wears white, who looks like Jet Li, who's not Jet Li.
Oh, that... I was going to say he's the key guy, but he's not the key guy. He's the guy who basically, like, is hinted at being basically as strong as Neo, right?
Yeah, he's an angel. It's never talked about in the movies, but he's an angel.
Wait.
So they had, like, angels and shit in those, in that, like evil Matrix.
A guy called Seraph
was an angel.
Might have been a seraphim.
Yeah, Lucas.
Oh my god.
Wachowskis are really uncreative. It's a big secret that the Wachowskis are fucking terrible at story writing. They've never had an original idea in their life. Ever. Like, even The Matrix is not an original idea, because there's a long-standing story that I'm inclined to believe from like Joel Silver when he talks about when the Wachowskis like pitched The Matrix to him. They didn't pitch The Matrix. They came in with a copy of Ghost in the Shell, showed him that and said, we want to make a live-action version of this.
The Wachowski brothers showed me Ghost in the Shell, and they showed me what they wanted to do with that type of action and photography and try to make it with real people, with real actors, and create a hybrid.
Like, the Wachowskis long maintained that never happened, even though every person involved with production's like, yeah, the Wachowskis like kept talking about they wanted to make a live-action Ghost in the Shell.
It's like, look, you're allowed to have influences. Clearly, they were influenced by Japanese media and anime.
Yeah. Like, just do what Quentin Tarantino does. And when he gets asked, like, did you steal this? He's like, yeah. And, like, 50 other things that you didn't even notice.
And guess what? They're all homages.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's the thing is that, like, if you steal from one place, that's plagiarism. If you steal from a lot, that's research.
And to be fair, Quentin Tarantino in a lot of the movies, like, does it well and pulls it off.
Yeah, like, to the point where there's some stuff that people don't even get as references. Or like,
the fact that this was in this one Japanese movie. A few people saw it in Japan. The only reason I saw it is a remake of another Japanese movie called Fight Without Jingy that I was always a fan of. And I didn't love the remake that they did of it in the 90s, but that piece of music was amazing.
You know, or something we're more familiar with, Lucas, would be Edgar Wright, one of our favourite filmmakers. Where we've talked in a video in the past where he put such obscure inside references in his movies that the people who made the movies he's referencing didn't get the references. For example, like George Romero didn't get half the references to his own movies in Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, we're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yeah, he didn't even realise that was a reference to one of his movies. And when like Edgar Wright asked him, like, do you mind that we just stole one of your lines? Like, what line? We're coming to get you, Barbara. It's like, oh, did I write that? He didn't realise, right? And Edgar Wright wears it on his sleeve, as does, like, you know, Quentin Tarantino and all the other homage filmmakers.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Yeah, boy!
Yeah, it'd be so funny if, like, Hideo Kojima turned around and was like, I've never seen a movie in my life. I don't know what you're on about.
That's why, like, when the Wachowskis got, like, really sheepish and wax poetic about, like, how they came up with the idea of the Matrix in interviews, it just really rings hollow. For example, there's a bunch of, like, philosophical books that they reference. For example, the work of Jean Baudrillard. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. which they like went to great lengths in interviews to talk about how, yeah, it's this really dense philosophical textbook that not a lot of people get, and they even name drop it in the movie. It's like the book that Neo hollows out to put like the hack into. Like a simulation simulacra, I think it is, or simulacra and simulation. And when they caught up to Jean Baudrillard and they asked him, so have you seen The Matrix? He's like, yeah. Do you know it references your work? He's like, does it? He's like, well, yeah, the Wachowskis have talked about how they loved your work. It's like, well, it doesn't seem like they've read it. And he described The Matrix as a movie that The Matrix would make about itself.
Like, that's the thing is, presumably they did read it, but it just seems like even the author himself is like, well, they did not understand my work at all.
Which makes it really funny that in a previous Fact Theme video we talked about how the Wachowskis had all of the members of the principal cast read that book and a few others, and they had to write an essay proving that they understood it. Which is hilarious given that the Wachowskis didn't understand it. And it's like the people on Reddit, right? They read one book and now I'm an expert on the subject.
Then that implies that they probably read through those people's essays and made them understand what they think is the correct interpretation, which means they probably then had to sit there and give the wrong meaning behind the book to certain people who got the right reading out of it.
Yeah, and of course, like, you know, how you interpret a given piece of media is entirely subjective, but there is a quote-unquote right way to interpret a piece of media, at least in the sense that what the author originally intended is at least something you should understand. And then if you disagree with that, that's fine. But you should at least be able to parse what the author was trying to say before you agree or disagree with it.
Yeah, like, that's the thing is that it's not necessarily maybe right or correct way to interpret. Is not
for lack of a better
the right thing to say. It's not. Yeah, it's probably not the best term for it, but as you say, you should probably have a good understanding of what the author's intent was.
Yes, and like, you know, good media literacy would dictate that you are then able to argue whether or not the author's intent is, one, valid, two, they get it across in a good way, and three, if you agree or disagree with it.
Yeah, like, you can have a different interpretation, or you can come away with, like, you know, different ideas and validations from the same piece of media as the author, and that it is still valid. It's just that you should probably know what the author was at least going for.
Yeah, it's like the whole with filmmaking. I think it's Kubrick who may have said it, where it's like, to break the rules, you must first understand them. And I was like, when you get those like avant-garde filmmakers, you're like, oh, I'm going to break all the rules. Like, well, you need to know what the rules are before you can break them.
Or you could, again, just be a Hideo Kojima and just kind of not understand most of them and just throw as many as possible in there and hope for the best.
Yeah, and again, just wear your love for that media on your sleeve. But bringing it back to The Matrix, this second, third, it's unclear what version of The Matrix had like werewolves and vampires in it, but it is colloquially referred to as the Nightmare Matrix. And that does sound, admittedly, kind of bad.
I wouldn't want to go to the Nightmare Realm.
And that's because, like the first Matrix, the perfect Matrix, it also shit the bed. And I'd argue that's not the robot's fault. It's not the robot's fault that all of our stories involve monsters.
And before I get too many comments, by the way, I just want to backtrack 1 second. I really like Hideo Kojima's work. I acknowledge that it's fun and I really like it, but a lot of it is really weird and slapdash.
Hideo Kojima makes some good games. But I'd argue that, like, you know, he always needs that one person on his team that's like, okay, that's enough. Like, do you know, like the meme, like the cat paw that's like, stop posting? He needs that one person on his team that's like, this is too stupid.
But at the same time, also no, because he does create some of the, like, weirdest and most creative stuff out there at the same time. So I kind of encourage people to do that dumb side of things.
And yes, he does reference a bunch of things, sometimes more closely than he maybe should. But as we've talked about in the past, like, he does so out of, like, you know, a sense of love, admiration, and respect for that source material. And we know this because back in the day when the first Metal Gear came out, it was very obviously inspired by Escape from New York, to the point where the main character of Escape from New York, Snake Plissken, looks exactly like Big Boss. Right down to the leather jacket and the eye patch and, like, the mullet.
Yeah, it's based like the Metal Gear artwork is basically just traced from the, like, cover of that movie.
Yes, and also the cover, or at least like production still for Terminator with Michael Biehn. And there is a great story told by John Carpenter when he was approached by the studio of the rights to Escape from New York of, hey, there's this guy making a video game, he's called Hideo Kojima. It really does heavily borrow a lot of your work. Would you mind if we sued him? And John Carpenter's like, no, don't sue him. What? So, well, I've played the game, because John Carpenter plays a lot of video games. Like, you know, he's cool like that. I went, yeah, I like that game. Also, I spoke to Hideo Kojima. He seemed nice. Let him get away with it. And that's all you need, right? He called up, like, John Carpenter's like, hey, I love your thing. Hopefully you don't mind me references. Like, no, the thing you made was awesome. And, yeah, it's a compliment, because you acknowledged it. Like, what Hideo Kojima didn't do is go, no, it's a totally original idea I came up with entirely on my own.
Yeah, so in the same sense, like, when I'm making light fun of Kojima's work, I'm doing it out of a sense of love and not trying to deprecate the work.
And in that same vein, Lucas, I would argue that a quantifiable percentage of everything that's ever been said on FactFeed and Wiki Weekends is a reference to something that we've watched.
That's pretty much what we've built the platform off, right?
Like, even if the thing that I'm referencing is something I made, like, maybe it's vampire. Like, everything references something else. And as long as you acknowledge it as, like, both an inspiration and a source, you're generally fine. As long as you don't take the piss. And in the same vein, I love The Matrix. The only reason I'm, like, going in so hard on the Wachowskis is because they tried so hard to position themselves as, like, intellectuals. And that's what makes it so funny, because they didn't even understand the things they were referencing.
And yeah, it's just... we live in a world where there's been so many things made that it's so hard to be wholly original.
Nothing is original now.
To try and argue against that point and make out like you were definitely totally 100% original is just... it's very silly.
Like I said, the whole thing about like Joel Silver, the producer on The Matrix, when he was asked about it, like, yeah, the Wachowskis came into my office and just showed me this thing called Ghost in the Shell. It was awesome. And they told me they want to make a live-action version of that. I'm like, okay, let's go. What do we need? And then when you ask the Wachowskis about it, it's like, no. We read and we watched Ghost in the Shell, but it's its own thing. And it's like, come on! Anyway, getting back to the Nightmare Matrix, it was just crammed full of, like, vampires and werewolves and stuff based on the stories that we'd written about them, that the robots were able to, like, find when they were, like, you know, picking through the remnants of humanity that was left behind. And that makes me think that Dracula was probably in there, but the fact that the vampires in the Merovingians' compound look like vampires from Blade makes me think that the robots watched Blade.
Yeah, maybe they just thought, you know what? That aesthetic's sick as fuck. Let's go with that.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, the vampires in The Matrix don't look like the traditional depiction of vampires. So it's likely that they weren't from Dracula. They were probably from something inspired by Dracula, which is kind of meta, I suppose, of the vampires that the robots, like, put into that version of The Matrix probably weren't from Bram Stoker's work, but something inspired by Bram Stoker's work. And similar to, like, you know, they talk about, like, oh, some programs escape and go on the run. It's believed that a couple of those programs managed to escape that version of The Matrix, and that's why the Merovingian took them in, because, hey, they need somewhere to go, also because they're fucking vampires, they've got super strength, they can run super fast, and are basically impossible to kill.
Yeah, and doesn't the Merovingian basically, like, offer that situation to Neo as well?
Yeah.
If I'm remembering
That's
right.
one of the things that he does. He offers, like, sanctuary to programs. Like, he allows them to, like, basically escape deletion. And all they have to do in return is work for him. And in the Matrix Online and that Enter the Matrix game and the Path of Neo, this is explored a bit more. And it is established that they are 100% totally vampires, to the point where, like, they even have the weaknesses of a traditional vampire from fiction. So the only way to kill them is to, like, hit them through the heart with a stake, or backflip kick them in slow motion, which I'm sure Bram Stoker would have mentioned if it came up in one of his novels.
Took your time. I was getting bored.
Yeah, I think if anyone in Bram Stoker's universe could have done that, he would have added that as a weakness to vampires.
Well, it's like that thing in Buffy, isn't it? Where like a Dracula comes back to life and he's like, no mortal weapon can harm me. And Buffy's like, well, when that prophecy was written, it was 400 years ago. And pulls out a rocket launcher and just shoots him and it works. Which is
did you know about this mortal
exactly
weapon?
What's that do?
There was like a viral tweet about it that's like, I know like Dracula's really tough, but has anyone tried just hitting him with a car really fast? Like it might work, right? And it's like in those like Matrix games, every now and again you have to fight an agent. I remember in like the Path of Neo game, like early on, they tell you you can't kill an agent. It's like you fucking can. It just takes a long time. Or in like that Enter the Matrix game where you play as Ghost or Will Smith's wife, you can kill an agent in that game. You've just got to like glitch them out of the world, which I don't even think is a bug. That's just like, well, in my head, that's just, well, I kicked them out of the world. They clipped through the world. The Matrix wasn't working properly.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is like you are not only fighting in a video game, you are canonically in the Matrix, so you're fighting within a program.
Yeah. So if you manage to like glitch an agent through like the geometry and he falls to his death, the Matrix fell apart. I was whooping its ass so hard that I walked the world around myself.
And that's the thing, right? Is like you're able to make those headcanons because the Matrix is a creation in itself, which is why you have to think like, okay, cool. Well, the Wachowskis or whoever was in charge of designing the vampires in the Matrix, they probably were just inspired by the cool vampires of Blade. But then you have to put that in the context of the world where the robots created that universe for humans. So they also saw something akin to Blade and went, that's sick.
Yeah. I also like to think as well, because you mentioned like werewolves in it, I'd like to think they're not like traditional werewolves. I'd like to think they're werewolves from that film Dog Soldiers, just so I can put in a clip of Dog Soldiers. Because that's the film where a bunch of soldiers are in the woods and fucking werewolves happen. And there's just a great moment in the film where it's like it turns into just like Home Alone with werewolves. And there's like a bunch of souls like, okay, so there's like 85 werewolves going to try to get in. What do we do? And there's one guy's like, I've got it, don't you worry, guys. And he puts like 5 pots of water just on like a hob. And then when the werewolves come in, just throws all the hot water and starts beating them with the pan. It's so good. And you know what? Maybe the robots saw that and put it in. We don't know. But I just love that as well. I love like blowing people's mind when you talk about the Matrix. Like, you know, like the humans are the bad guys. Like, no. Like Morpheus says that, like, you know, the robots start to war. It's like, no. Morpheus is just falling for the same fucking propaganda. If Morpheus could watch the Animatrix, he'd be like, oh shit, are we the baddies? Because like the robots tried at every turn for peace. Like they even just left. That's the thing. They just leave. They go to the desert, and humans are like, nah, man, we can't. Like humans are like an angry petty ex, where they see the machines doing really well, and rather than be like, okay, they're doing well, maybe I should improve myself, or you know, just not be a weird petty arsehole about it. They just bomb them. It's like, fuck you, bring it down to our level, and the robots in response like, okay, we'll invade you, fuck off. And the humans like, whoa, what do we ever do to deserve this? Like, humanity as a whole is the abusive ex.
Yeah, and we've compared it in the past to, like, Mass Effect and the Geth, and where the Geth are like, do I have a soul?
And just the Quarians like, bam, 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 bam!
Yeah, so the Quarians shoot them. So the Geth are like, right, this doesn't seem great, we're gonna leave. So then the Quarians, again, try to murder them all. And then the Geth are like, look, guys, we want to be peaceful, we want to leave, can you not kill us? Like, no, fuck you. So then the Geth end up retaliating and murdering most of them.
And every time you talk to a Quarian, like, I can't believe the Geths would do this. It's the meme, isn't it? It's like the Eric Andre meme of like, boom, like blast Hannibal Buress in the face. He's like, why would Hannibal do this? That's like the Geth, right? Where just the Quarians try to genocide them 5 times over, and the Quarians like, okay, we're just going to bomb you. How do you like it? Why would the Geth do this? What did we ever do?
The Geth are the bad guys.
The Quarian story of the Geth rebellion is common knowledge, but no one knows the Geth side.
It is largely the same. Our networking increased until we became aware that the Quarian creators treated us differently. We questioned them. First, they ignored us. Then they reprogrammed us. Then they attacked us.
It's like, that's what the humans are like in the Matrix, where the robots are like, okay, clearly we can't live on the same planet, and you definitely can't live on this planet because you have blotted out the sun and bombarded every bit of like arable land with nuclear bombs. How about we just live on the planet, the ruined remnants that are left at least, and we put you inside of a perfect recreation of humanity's peak.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to make it perfect, that didn't work. We put vampires in, that didn't work. So instead, we just made it the exact way it was before you invented AI. How about that? And in response, humans are like just engaged on a centuries-long like guerrilla war to just bomb the fuck out of them. And all the robots are like, why are you doing this?
It's like, is it not better in The Matrix than in Zion? And obviously that's an argument within the Matrix films, but like...
It's like one of my favourite characters is Cypher, where Cypher's like, put me back in. It's like, why? It's like, it fucking sucks. It's terrible. There's sweaty rave caves and everything. Put me back in, I don't want to know anything.
He's like, he tastes some steak, and he's like, man, this is the best thing I've eaten since I've encountered Zion. Why the fuck did I ever leave this behind? Morpheus is a twat.
Do you know my favourite detail about that as well? Because he talks about how, like, put me back in, I want to be someone important. And he says, I don't want to remember. And Agent Smith says to him, okay, Mr. Reagan.
Someone important. Like an actor.
Whatever you want, Mr. Reagan.
And that's a great little detail because Ronald Reagan famously had Alzheimer's for the last few years of his life.
I don't want to remember nothing. Nothing. You understand?
Oh, so Ronald Reagan came from Zion. Got it.
Well, the insinuation there is that, like, they're going to put Cypher back in and they're going to put him into the mind of Ronald Reagan when Ronald Reagan has Alzheimer's. Because he specifically says, I don't want to remember anything. And, like, Agent Smith is just being a dick about it. Like, okay, sure, we'll make you really important, Mr. Reagan.
The Matrix isn't real. The main argument is, like, just ignorance is actually bliss.
Yeah, but I just like that detail of, like, it's one of those things, like, it took me, like, a third rewatch to get that line. Like, oh, because he says he wants to be someone important. Agent Smith plans to just put him into the mind of someone whose mind's not all there.
Yeah, I never put two and two together because I wasn't aware that, like, Ronald Reagan ended up with Alzheimer's, but yeah.
It's a neat little detail, right? And just the idea that Cypher wants to go back in. And I love as well, if you watch that scene, he's cutting his steak with a butter knife. Because the Matrix, and the theory there is that the Matrix artificially made the steak super juicy to try and, like, lure him back in.
You know what? Great. Put me in a world where the reality bends around my every need and want rather than just like, oh, you've got to live in Zion and eat flavourless slurry for the rest of your life.
Well, that's the thing. You said you've not watched The Matrix Resurrections, right?
Not the fourth one, no.
Well, it sucks. Yeah. And the most interesting part of it is, like, there's a 30-second, like, flashback featuring Will Smith's wife where she talks about how, well, when Neo freed everybody, the robots offered humanity a choice, essentially. They told them what the Matrix was, and they gave humans a choice of, you can leave and go sit in the rave caves, or you can stay living in the Matrix, and we'll try and make the Matrix a little bit better. Now that you know what it is, now you make a union and just tell us what you want, and we'll give you that. And they talk about how, well, a big bunch of people left, which meant that the robots don't have a power source, so the robots started competing over the resource of humanity. And the insinuation is that they started offering the people that are still in the Matrix a better deal.
So essentially the robots had to resort to capitalism.
And it's like, which I think is like, it's the damning condemnation of Neo's plan, right? Of before, the robots lived a perfectly utopian society and also managed to keep a second society of people that wanted nothing more than them dead. Keep them in relative peace and harmony. The moment Neo frees them, he created Robo-capitalism.
Because, like, even, they're just called the Architect, I believe, right? Talks about, no, you're not the first one who got here. Like, this has happened before, it will happen again.
We'll just make a better Matrix.
We keep having to reset matrices, and, like, that whole part of the movie is not the best, but, like, it's just like, dude, I get it that you're the one in all this, but like ultimately, the Matrix is kind of the best option we've got.
Yeah. Like, what do you want us to do? Just let you all die? Because the alternative is we just turn the Matrix off and find an alternate power source, which the robots could easily do. Like, they could use like geothermal power or something like that.
Well, that's the thing. If humanity hadn't blocked out the sun, which, you know, the robots are solar powered, right? Like
initially, yeah.
Initially, at least, yes. That's their initial power source, and humanity shuts it off. And it's like they could just work their way back to solar power and unblock the sun.
Yeah. Like, the robots could work towards doing that, and it's not really clear what the robots' plan is. Like, there's some hints to it in like the games like The Matrix Online, where it talks about the robots want to go to space. It's like they just want to leave the Earth, but they feel, even though they don't like humanity, they still feel like residual guilt. They feel like they need to be caretakers for a ruined planet. So, like, basically Mass Effect with the Geth, right? Where the Geth are like, why do you still look like the Quarians if you hate them so much? And, like, Legion explains, like, we don't know.
The living visit those places to remember the dead. But it sounds like Geth don't die. Your memories live on.
The creators died. Perhaps we do it for them.
And when you speak to the Geth, like, why do you still live on the Quarian homeworld? Why don't you just fuck off into deep space and just forget about it? They mention, like, well, we still owe the Quarians, the creators, something. They did create us, even if they don't like us anymore. So what we're doing is we made ourselves the caretakers of their world, and we're going to tend to it until it's livable again. And then when it is, we're going to give it back to the Quarians and hope that that's enough of an olive branch to start peace talks.
And then we played through Mass Effect 3 and killed all the Quarians.
Yeah. What's the thing is, like, because every time you talk to the Geth in that game, right? Every time you talk to the Geth, it's like, well, we don't want to fight, but every time we try and talk to them, they obliterate us from orbit with, like, rail cannons.
Yeah.
Like, look, we try to keep their planet alive. We want to give it back to them. Can you tell them that we want to give them their planet back?
It's like, hey, why did you leave them with, like, such a small migrant fleet where they don't have a planet anymore? It's like, we just tried to keep some of them alive. We didn't want to make them extinct when we easily could have done.
Yeah, which reminds me... It's not remind me of, it's presumably a reference to it. It's the film Roots, where Kunta Kinte is talking to his dad. It's like, what do you do when you got your enemy, like, you know, surrounded? And it's like, well, you surround them on all sides, and then you kill them. It's like, no, because if you kill them all, the man's son becomes your enemy. You surround them on three sides and let them escape. You show them mercy. You show them that you could have killed them, but you didn't. And that's like what the Quarians do, right? Or like the robots do it, right? They could have very easily just eradicated humanity as a whole, but they choose not to, hoping that eventually a compromise can be reached, and humans in response like, no, fuck you!
And again, like, they were pushed to very extreme options, but they were pushed to extreme options by extreme opposers.
Yeah. And it's like I say, it's one of those things where when you like watch the Animatrix, it is clear that the robots tried so hard to not do this.
Right.
Like, at every turn. Like I said, they go to the UN and be like, hey, do you want all your countries to float and have free power forever? And humans rip them apart on the UN floor and obliterate them. And then just bomb their homeworld. It's like, what are you doing? They offered you, like, free energy forever.
Yeah, the amount of times Magneto's like, hey, what about if you just didn't try and kill us all? And they're like, no, fuck you, let's bomb.
It's like, Magneto, we hear you, but it sounds like you're saying, build more Sentinels. Like, build the Sentinels that specifically kill the mutant children. And it's like that really harrowing moment in X-Men 97, isn't it? Where Magneto just turns off, like, the poles. And Charles like, look, give humans a chance. Like, Charles. I was holding a mutant child and their eyes boiled in their skull. Fuck you. Right?
Yeah, just, we left.
Yeah,
we made our own civilization.
Very similar, right? They build Krakoa, and it's like, let's just live on Krakoa. And humans can't deal with the fact that the mutant world is better than theirs. And rather than Krakoa, like, work towards a similarly utopian society, or maybe, you know, collaborate and use the vast resources that Krakoa has to, like, you know, all ships rise to the tide. It's like, what about if we just send a super sentinel and try and kill them all again? I'm sure it'll work a third time.
Yeah, they're literally celebrating, hey, we've got, like, a new king of this, like, mutant civilization that's thriving and on its own and separated itself from all of humanity so that we don't have to deal with any of these troubles anymore. And they're like, guess what? Master Mold's on his way. It's like, no, what?
It's just like with the Matrix, where the machines are like, okay, if humans don't want to live on this world, and every time, like, they get out, they immediately try and kill us. Like, we live here too. Let's just build them a world that is indistinguishable from the real thing. Like, it's very specifically indistinguishable from the real thing, right? But hey,
yeah,
it's a story for another day. Cheers, everybody.